Hello and welcome to the Quiet Light Podcast. I'm Pat Yates. Appreciate you joining me today. We have a great conversation with Scott Couchenour. Scott has the business servingstrong.com, and it's really an interesting approach. He talks about if you're over 50, talking about your fourth quarter, as he would call it, your next life and how you want that to be in business or whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish in life. It's really interesting because I'm in his wheelhouse, which I'm not really excited about admitting. I was wishing I'd be like late third quarter, but he is classifying me as a fourth quarter person now, which it makes me depressed a little bit. But I'm still going to do a good podcast with him, and we're going to talk about the things that people are trying to position their lives to be able to be different. It really applies to me because I've been thinking about this a lot, how everything that I do fits into a lifestyle of being married long term and having children and what my next time will be. I found it really fascinating that he talks about how you need a business coach, not if you should decide one. Like you get an attorney if it's legal, you get an accountant if it's financial, and this you very well may need. And most people need to think about how they can improve their business life and it'll roll over to their personal life. I'm really excited to talk to Scott about this, so let's get right to it. Scott, how are we doing today? It's great to have you in the Quiet Light Podcast.
I'm doing great, and it's great to be here with you, Pat.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. It's interesting because you hit on something. If we had a 20-something podcast guy here, he'd be out of his mind today. If I had Ethan Alexander, who's like a guy I eat tacos with on the road all the time, he's one of my favorite guys to travel with. He wouldn't have any idea what we're talking about today. It'd have to be his dad or somebody. So it's really exciting to get in here and talk about something that's actionable for us old guys. I'm excited. So Scott, I know that you have a great business and you've got a great story of background and actually even better story trying to prepare people. But I'd love to hear about you and your family, where you're from. Give us an idea of all about you.
Sure. I've been married 38 years. We have two grown married children who have given us three grandkids. Two of them live close. The other one is about 2.5 hours away. So we do a lot of FaceTime. They range from 4.5 down to 1. And we're loving life that way. We live in Ohio. I grew up here, never really moved away from home. I'm one of 5 children. I'm the fourth of 5 children. Never felt the need to move and get into the adventure. I'm very consistent that way. Been loving Ohio. I've been married 38 years to a lady who is incredibly organized, incredibly detailed, and just loving life. I can't believe it's been this long that we've been married.
You know, it's really funny that you say that because you and I go on a lot of lines very similar. I've been married 33 years, have 3 children, of which we're hoping for those grandchildren. I only have 1 that's married and 2 that are in relationships. So I think we're similarly aligned in this. And it's funny how in reflection you see all those things, and now your life is about different goals. And I know that's what we're going to talk about. That's the exciting part, is that you're going to dive deep into it. So I know that what we want to talk a little bit about is your business Serving Strong. And I know there's a real background to that and a lot of dynamics we want to go into, but maybe just give the listeners an overview about Serving Strong.
Serving Strong, I started that back in November of 2007. I had been doing some coaching up to that point. It has a thread in my previous employment, being the youngest brother of I have 3 older brothers and 1 younger sister. We were all in our family business at the time. We'll talk about that in a moment, I'm sure. But someone had the idea, let's look into life coaching as a benefit for our employees. And being the youngest brother, I was tasked with the responsibility. So I started researching life coaching, fell in love with the dynamic because it's so powerful. It can be very powerful between coach and client, that I hired my own coach. And then I became certified as a coach. And I coached for a while, but then in November 2007, started this Serving Strong Enterprises. And the intent there at that moment was coaching pastors to avoid burnout. That was the original beginning, and just kept doing that on the side for many, many years. And then when we closed our family business, went into it full time. And so it's basically I'm a fourth quarter coach, life and business. I cover both sides, and Serving Strong is here to help the person who is generally in their mid to late 50s, who's beginning to have these ideas or thoughts or questions, whatever it is, about life and the extent of life and legacy and meaning and purpose. And so we address that, and we create a strategic way to go about life. So I help my clients create strategic plans, personal strategic plans.
It's really amazing because when I was reading the site and I spent some time researching this and thinking a lot on it because I'm basically your age client and, and probably someone that looks at a lot of the things. So what's interesting when I look down the five things you talk about, you have them, and I'm sure you talk passionately about them. And I wanted to go down them, and you can address them in different ways. One is to be physically fit. Another one's to be emotionally healthy. Another's financially free, vocationally aligned. I pretty much all understand all those, but there was one that really struck me the way that you said it, which is relationally rich. I find that an interesting term because I'm sure it's not on the surface as easy as some think to understand what that is. Maybe jump off by explaining what that would be because I'm really curious myself.
Yeah. Relationally rich it's based on the fact that we don't live life in a vacuum, and we are built for community. That's part of the core values of Serving Strong, is that we really do need one another. And so as we enter our 60s and our 70s, an interesting dynamic will take place. And that is that the number of people we know will get smaller and smaller. And as that happens, how deeply are you connected to a small group of people that you can do life with and in essence, finish life with? Relationally rich is having, here's a good way to describe it. A couple of ways. One is it's 2:30 in the morning and you're really, really in need of someone helping you do something. I don't know what it would, you just fill in the blank. Do you have someone that you would call? And would they be willing to come and get out of bed and come and help you in the middle of the night? That's one thing. The second thing is, in general, not everybody gets buried in a coffin these days, but the idea that, do you have 6 pallbearers in mind, 6 people in your life who would carry your casket? That the depth of relationships with people who are close and very dear to us, we absolutely need that. We have to have that. And that to me is a definition of being relationally rich, doing real life with people as we face the things that we face in our fourth quarter. If I've got a friend and my friend, his mother passes away, will I walk with him through that loss? Yes, that's being relationally rich. That's what it looks like.
Right.
So we need relationships.
That's really amazing. And you know what? You have an interesting perspective that some may not have in this kind of situation. You probably worked with a lot of people that may have been, when you started 2007, 2010, 2011, the world was a little different. So people had different goals and different ideas. We weren't working remotely. And then all of a sudden you have this weird line that people are always going to talk about, the cutting point when COVID happened and the world changed and everybody was remote and all these places. Stress added, a lot of things added. Have you seen a shift in the dynamic of people needing this more after, maybe going through all of that versus when you first started the business?
I'll tell you what I've noticed. Let's talk in terms of pre-COVID, post-COVID. Pre-COVID, we needed it. We all talked about it. It was very important. And leading up to COVID, we also had this rise in technology and rise in social media and rise of looking at a small screen and scrolling. COVID created an accelerant to our basic need for relationship. I think it's not that COVID caused something. COVID accelerated what is already a basic need that we all have. And we were awakened to, mileage varies by person, but we were awakened to, it's time to be authentic. It's time to be real. I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn and have some great relationships that I have yet to meet face to face. But what I've noticed is the power pose is going away. The real nature of life is coming across in posts. There is a hunger for authenticity. There is a hunger for depth of relationship. And when you can meet someone that you've only known online for several years, it becomes a very powerful event. That's my take on it. I think we all have what is standard across the board is we all need each other. We need a close group of friends to do life with.
Right.
COVID accelerated and brought to the forefront just how important those relationships really are.
That's great. Again, I'm with Scott Couchenour with Serving Strong. So, Scott, tell us a little bit about Serving Strong. I ran over the bullets that you had on the fantastic fourth quarter a little bit as an overview, but I'm sure you want to dive deeper on. And by the way, I feel I'm trying to be in the last 2 minutes of my third quarter. I really don't want to say I'm in the fourth quarter yet. So I'm going to deny that I'm in that fourth quarter area right now, but I'd love for you to explain, because when I first read it, I thought it was Q4 stuff, advice you could do on Q4 when I first looked at it, like, oh, these are marketing ideas for Q4. But then I read into it and went, wow, that's interesting. But now I feel really old. So
Yeah,
tell me a little bit about the philosophy behind the company and what you do, when you're talking to clients.
sure. I'll take you back to the end of 2021 when I had an awakening to what I was doing in my business. And so I hired a branding coach, and she helped. We spent 4 months together, and she helped to show me just how eclectic I was all over the map from a marketing standpoint. Out of those conversations came this passion, this identity that I had inside of me. And that was to help at that time. When we started talking about this originally, my branding coach and we started talking about the Gen X generation, which, I will cling to the rest of my life, even though I was born in 1965, which is kind of the cutoff, you 64, 65, 66. I'm a Gen X crowd. I'm not a baby boomer. I don't want to be a baby boomer. To me, that's old. But great people. Don't get me wrong. The Gen X thing then morphed into me looking at the average life expectancy of a U.S. male, a male in the United States. At that time, it was 78 and a half years is the average life expectancy of a male in the United States. Females, a couple of years older. So I got to thinking in terms of math. I love math. And I was looking at, okay, so your first quarter is your first 20 years. That's your learning quarter. That's where you're being nurtured. You're going to school, you graduate. Now you're in your 20s. 20s and 30s is your second quarter. You build in the second quarter. You build your life, your career, your family. Your 20s and your 30s, this is where you start to have kids, you start to build a family. In your third quarter, your 40s and 50s, I call that the reaping quarter. You start to reap some of the things you sowed in your second quarter. There's kind of a hill that you kind of go over, right? And in fact, when I was growing up, I don't know if this is true of you, but when you turned 40, the phrase was, Lordy, Lordy, look who's 40. And if you had those creative friends, you would come home from work and there would be all these black balloons in the front yard and all these tombstones and all that for your 40th birthday, right? And the phrase is, you welcome to the over the hill gang, right? Over the hill. That was always a phrase when I remember growing up. The truth is, and let's pause here in the third quarter for a second. Say you're in your 40s or your 50s and you're listening to this. We were raised to think there was one hill, that over the hill means one hill that we are now over, and the rest of life is a decline. And what I have discovered as I've focused on my coaching and strategic plans, my research has shown that I found is that there is a second hill. There is a second strength. In fact, there's a book out there called From Strength to Strength, which I highly recommend to anybody who is wrestling with this, is this all there is kind of thing. There is a second hill, a second strength. The first is fluid intelligence. This is where we have a lot of energy, not a lot of wisdom, but a lot of energy. And we'll throw a bunch of stuff on the wall and we'll see what sticks and we'll make it happen. But that begins to wane in our mid 30s. But there's a second hill or second energy that begins to build, and that's crystallized intelligence, where we have a lot more wisdom. Yes, there is decline. Yes, I can't run the marathon like I did in my mid 30s as I'm reaching 60. I would have to train totally different. That's because of stages of life. But in the third quarter, we're wrestling with the decline of one curve, and I'm here to change the narrative. There is another curve. There is another thing that we can embrace. And actually, my belief is the fourth quarter is the best quarter possible, because in generalities, I will mention some of the dynamics. As you reach the end of your 50s and you come into your 60s, a number of dynamics are happening. Some good, some not so good. Your debt is generally down. Your income is generally up. Your expenses are generally down. Your wisdom is through the roof. Your experiences, the things that you have learned. And in this lifetime, we are more likely to live longer because of the emphasis on health, the emphasis on dieting and eating right and exercise. So when you combine the availability of time and the awareness of legacy, I think, and I'm going to make this true of my life, make the fourth quarter the most impactful ever. And so that, yeah, I'm over one hill, but I'm not done. The people I talk with, the clients that I work with, they have no intention of retirement. The word retirement is just a title of a fund.
Yeah.
And that's why in one of the 6 hallmarks, we're talking about vocational alignment. It's an alignment of what you do with your abilities and with your wisdom in a different stage of life.
That's really amazing. So, I mean, I think, Scott, when you talk about that, when you talk about the alignment that, that you would need in that kind of a situation, it's really interesting that, I use different terms. I talk about lifestyle businesses, which is essentially similar, that if your goal is to be living in South Florida all year and doing as much recreational stuff as you can, but have a business that you run 10, 15, 20 hours a week, and that provides enough income that your lifestyle or your hope for your life can be sustained as, in a little more simple way, that you're more fulfilled personally than you are professionally, or that balance is there more than probably in your 20s, 30s, and 40s. So how do you suggest people approach that? I mean, some people have to be tied to an office. Others are very fortunate that maybe they have a business that can run with them. I mean, you talk to a lot of people. How do you usually approach that with a client?
Well, I think you mentioned it, the goal, the people who have a goal in mind. That leads to this whole idea of being strategic. And if we're not strategic, especially as we enter the fourth quarter, the ramifications are enormous. The first thing what I do is with a client is, okay, who are you? I talk about the Big 10, the personality, skills, abilities, strengths, weaknesses, core values, and that sort of thing. And there's 10. Out of that group of 10, we build a purpose statement. And this is no matter where they're at in life. If they're tied to a 9-to-5 desk job that seems like it's going nowhere, we still take a look at who are you? And then we build a purpose statement out of who they are. What if I'm allowed to live for the next 20, 30 years, what is my purpose? Why? Why
Right.
would I still be alive? And then that leads to a vision statement, which is what the world looks like and what you look like if you're true to that purpose over the long haul. That leads to a mission statement. A mission statement is just basically, this is how we're going to go about the vision. And mission has goals, and goals have actions. So, regardless of where you're at today, if you've got a strategy, you can begin living life in what I call 90-day sprints. It's a 90-day sprint lifestyle, an iterative process where if I know my purpose and I've got a vision and I've got a mission and I'm working on a couple of goals through certain actions for a 90-day period, at the end of that 90-day period, I will pause and I will say, okay, what do I know now that I didn't know when I started this sprint? And how can I take that information and go back through my purpose, vision, mission, goals, and iterate, and then do another 90-day sprint? What I've noticed in that sort of life, in that process, is that it's like a quarterback. All right. You just did a set of downs, had to punt. Quarterback is sitting on the sidelines, got the headphones on, looking at the Surface tablet, communicating to the offensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator can see the field from a different perspective, right? He's saying 68 needs to be double teamed. 44 is watching where you're throwing, so quit looking where you're going to throw. And so now the quarterback has gained knowledge and goes back out on the next set of downs smarter than the previous set of downs. That's what this process is. When we get a strategic plan on paper for the very first time, it's like a lump of clay on a potter's wheel. And we start working that clay 90-day sprint after another. And what happens is their vision starts to come closer and closer with every sprint. So it's not a linear thing, in like, for example, I've got a 10-year plan right now to build a community of people doing this, right? And I'm on sprint number 2, actually sprint number 1 of 40 sprints. 40 90-day sprints is 10 years. And I've got a very clear vision of what that community will look like. I'll be a chairman of the board. There will be 5,000 plus members, all these details. I just completed month 1 of this first sprint, and already I'm further ahead than I thought I would be.
Wow.
Because when you focus on something, when you focus on where you're headed, it grabs a hold of you. It's part of who you are, and you can't not talk about it. And when you can't not talk about it, you attract the right people and you repel the right people, and you see opportunities. There's a principle out there called the red car principle. When we're working on a strategy, a red car principle takes place, and that is, if you and I were meeting in a coffee shop and I asked you, how many red cars did you see on the way here? You would probably say, well, probably I saw a few, maybe. The odds are I would have seen some. But if I'd have said before we met that on your way to the coffee shop, when we meet, I'm going to give you $50 for every red car that you saw. Then when we get together and I say, how many red cars did you see? You would hand me a piece of paper and say, it would be 8 of them. You owe me 8 times 4, 50, whatever that is. Because you are focused on purpose, looking for red cars. You're not just noticing them, but there's an incentive. There's a plan in place. And so not only are you just kind of driving casually, but you're driving looking for red cars and tallying them. That's what takes place when we have a strategy. When you enter your 4th quarter strategically and improving in things like your emotional health and your physical fitness and your relational richness and vocational alignment and financial freedom. That focus helps you to notice opportunities that otherwise would slip right past you. And you grab a hold of opportunities when you're strategic.
That's
you asked
really
me to
good.
talk about this. This is what I live.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And what's interesting is the more that I listen to what you said, it's like in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, and especially how the world used to be, you take a job and you look at your future and you say, I have to go into the office, I have to be at this place, I have to do this, we'll take vacations when we can. Now it's more like, well, this is what I want to do. I'd like to go for 2 weeks to go to Texas and play golf or go out of the country and do something. And I'm going to work a little bit, but whenever I can, that's sort of the lifestyle that people would end up wanting, especially when they get like as an empty nester. I found a lot of time. I've been coaching high school basketball. I've been doing things with my son. There were a lot of activities that we had, and you sort of have to fill that time, which gives you an interesting opportunity. I'm sure the people coming in ended up with a lot more time on their hands. So is structuring their day and opportunities and how they approach the day part of that too?
Well, it can be. You're alluding to a system, and what I've discovered in working with clients is I'm very systematic. I'm the project manager of my clients' dreams. Right. So I love consistent strategy and consistent detail. Not all people like that, especially business owners. Don't give me the details. Give me the highlights. Give me, what's the bottom line? So I've discovered that there is a continuum of systems. On one end is utter chaos, and the other is OCD. Neither of which does anybody any good. Every one of us fits somewhere on a level of systems where there's not too much system, not too little, just the right amount of systems. So a systematic lifestyle for one may look totally different from another person. Here's the difference though. You are living strategically. You are living by design. If you face something, if an opportunity comes along and you don't have a strategy to run it through, you're either going to miss the opportunity or it's going to take you a lot longer to process that opportunity because you don't know how it's going to impact you relationally, physically, vocationally, financially, spiritually. But when you have a strategy and an opportunity comes along, you can simply filter that opportunity through where you're already headed. And you can decide very quickly at the bottom line, this opportunity will get me further, faster to where I'm going, or this opportunity is a distraction. Or, and there's a third option, this is an opportunity, maybe not for now, so we'll throw it on the parking board. So it's either now's the time, this opportunity is never going to work for me, or this opportunity might work, let's hold off to it. But you know that when you're strategic, when you're living life by design, you know that.
You know, what's interesting is this is not just a fourth quarter thing. It could be people's life, all the time,
Absolutely.
which conditions someone to do
Absolutely.
it, but it's great advice. So I know we've talked a lot about the philosophy around the business. So let's talk a little bit more hard about Serving Strong. And again, we're with Scott Couchenour with Serving Strong. So Scott, if someone comes in and wants to work with you hypothetically, how do you structure the business? How do they pay? Is there a length of contract? Tell us about how they work with Serving Strong.
Well, the first thing is we enter a 3-month contract and roughly 6 sessions. By the 4th session, we will have a strategic plan document in place. After that 4th session, then my clients will simulate a mini sprint where they will take action and check in for 4 weeks. And then we do a final review at the end of that. When we are completed with that, then I will support them for the rest of their life. And one main element of that support is a community that I am currently building. So you get your strategic plan, you're starting to work it. You are now entering life into a 90-day sprint cycle of life. And the support that I give is here are, how are things going? Weekly check-ins, and a lot of support. Now, I'm hoping to create, I'm not hoping, I am creating a community where everybody in the community is actually working their 4th quarter strategic plan, and they're living life and contributing to others and receiving advice from other members. But within that, I offer a private one-on-one coaching in a 3-month period, 3-month renewable if they would like. And down the road, we'll have some group coaching opportunities that make it a little more economic. But think of it as a 1-2 thing. The first stage is let's get your strategic plan document and let's get you working on that. And then that's yours to it's built to live with you the rest of your life. We build in a measure of iteration so that you're always learning and developing after every sprint. The second phase is that support, that ongoing support.
That is really great. I mean, obviously they get a chance to be able to talk with you and lean on you for a lot of different things. To be able to join, it's obviously not very difficult. So your goal is to have 500, or what was the number again of how many people you want to have that you're going to be mentoring by what time?
Well, at least 5,000 in 10 years, which is a
Wow.
whole mechanism with coaches and facilitators all working. As we scale, we'll bring in more coaches and bring in more facilitators to handle those small groups and those one-on-ones. But then we
Sure.
will do events with subject matter experts from all 6 hallmark professions.
It's
Spiritual.
really amazing. Again, Scott Couchenour with now Serving Strong. When you come in and work, how often? I mean, when you're adding people, do they get collaborate together, or are they just collaborating with you? I mean, are there opportunities to collaborate with others and be able to learn, sort of like I don't want to use the word mastermind as the way it is, but sort of an opportunity to be able to network with other entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. Entrepreneurs and housewives and pastors. And what I've noticed is when I've done some small groups, uh, what I've noticed is it, we do a thing called feed forward, where one member says, "This is what I'm working on." And then all the other members give one piece of advice. And the recipient, all they do is say, "Thank you." And then you move to the next person, do the same thing. And then the next person. So a group of 5, you will hear any number of suggestions that you will receive from the other 4 members, but you'll also hear members giving advice to other members and listen. And I've noticed that that's a very rich process, this feed forward exercise, where you might hear Susie tell Jimmy a piece of advice for where Jimmy's headed, and you'll think, I could use that myself. And I've had business owners receive advice from a housewife, and a housewife receive advice from a coach, and a coach receive advice from a truck driver. And it's fascinating because you get the perspective from all different viewpoints of life, different ways we were raised. And it is a much richer experience. And that's what I'm building. I'm creating that kind of community. It leads to a relational richness.
That's really awesome. So, Scott, listen, one thing I want you to be able to do is obviously talk about your company. And personally, you're obviously an amazing guy, family guy. All these things just add up to being able to have a great time working with you. And I think that people that look at this sometimes don't admit they need this kind of conversation, but it actually helps because it spurs so many thoughts. So Serving Strong is obviously a great business. You've had a great background. I know it came from a little strife and owning a business in yourself. And some of those things tend to form, the opinion of where people go in their life. So I wanted to wrap it up. Maybe if there's anything else you'd want to tell people about Serving Strong, maybe how your background sort of aided in you being able to do this. But what else should people know about Serving Strong and you?
Well, Serving Strong is birthed out of an experience, a hero's journey, if you will. I spent 24 years as a COO in our family business, a business my dad started. We designed and built churches across America. And then 2008 happened in the economy, which we didn't see it at the time, but it shifted the way churches decided who was going to build their buildings. But it took us 5 years to really do something. The board of directors elected me to become CEO to reinvent our company, which I did. And we were moving in that direction. But the 5-year slide that we experienced made us vulnerable from a cash flow standpoint to one project that had to start in June of 2015. Rather than it starting, the pastor had been having an affair, and that news came out in June of 2015. That was the last nail in the coffin. I had to close the business. It was a devastating time because I had attached my identity to what I did, and what I did was gone. My identity was gone. I didn't know who I was. I wrestled for too long, spent too much time and energy and money trying to figure out what I was going to do next. Hit the wall, like I said, got a branding coach, got really serious about what I was doing. And now I feel like I'm in sinus rhythm. I'm moving ups and downs, but generally upward. And that has now become a metaphor for what I do with my clients. I have determined that I would be the partner I wish I'd had in July of 2015, because I would have gone further, faster, with deeper understanding. And, if there's anybody listening here thinking, I'm not going to hire a coach, because that's admitting defeat. Coaching is usually associated with counseling, therapy, all of which are really good benefits. But the stigma is that I'm broken and I need to be fixed, so I'm going to hire a coach. That's not the truth. What I say is, do you have a CPA? Well, yes. Do you have an attorney? Yes. Do you have a wealth advisor? Yes. Well, why did you hire them? Well, because they know things I don't know. They give me perspective on my life that I can't see myself. Well, that's just what a coach does. You are strategically bringing in a second set of eyes into your advice circle.
Right.
And it's strategic. It's on purpose. It's not admitting defeat. It's actually, it's a decision of courage to bring a coach. Now, whether I'm the coach or not, I think coaching will benefit anybody who embarks on it. And that's what Serving Strong is. It's a coaching business that becomes the second set of eyes that helps you go further, faster, with deeper understanding.
That really makes a lot of sense. I mean, it is kind of interesting. You put a perspective there that I didn't really think about. Like entrepreneurs may think in their mind, well, I don't need a business coach. I already understand business. I'm already doing business. I have a successful business, but they don't know what they don't know from the personal side of how all those things mount up. And if you go through stress, better ways to manage and people to talk to. So I think it was really amazing how you put it from an attorney standpoint, accountant standpoint. You do need somebody else that can help clean your house in other areas. It's really, really amazing. And Scott, we really appreciate you being on the Quiet Light podcast. It's really amazing. So tell people how they can reach out, how they can find you. And also, one other question. So you don't necessarily have to go into the monetary side of it, but how do people, what do they do when they come to you? You said you have a 3-month plan, you have different plans. Are there other things that they can leverage if they're coming in to work with you at Serving Strong?
The main thing that I do is service over sales. Okay. And that's, I can say that till I'm blue in the face. You have to believe that. It starts with a conversation. I want to help someone, whether my approach with service over sales is that every conversation I have with people, I'm already assuming that they're paying me $100,000 for coaching, and I treat them that way. If that turns into a transaction, great. If not, I will have served someone. That to me is of greater value. And ironically, as I serve, then business comes to me. As I serve, opportunities open up. I don't do it for that reason. I do it from a core value of service. So it starts with a conversation. It starts with just tell me a little bit about what's going on in your life, where you're headed, where you would like to go, and that half hour, 45 minutes could be all you need. If not, we talk about the parameters, the particulars, and we go into a number of things. We go into we go as deep as you want to go. But by the end of that call, you know that there is hope, and there is a way to create a plan that puts a lid on regrets and leaves the lid off of freedom. So you can find me at servingstrong.com. You could email me at coach@servingstrong.com. And I'm all over LinkedIn. If you just search Serving Strong or search Scott Couchenour, you'll find me.
That's great. So we're going to spell it because it's a little different spelling. Couchenour, Scott Couchenour. It's been amazing having you in the podcast today. We'll have all the LinkedIn stuff. We'll make sure that's on the podcast so people can reach out to you. We really appreciate your time today. I think what you're doing is amazing, and it's really, really needed because as I've gone through this, some of the thoughts that have come to my head are exactly what you're teaching.
I appreciate it, Pat. It's been a great joy to be on here talking with you.
Thanks again. Appreciate you, Scott.